Can everybody hear me in the back? Great. I have to use the mic, which is awesome. My name is Heather Ann, and I am a USA Ultimate board member. I am one of the player elected representatives to the board. I'm also a player, coach, and organizer. I've been volunteering with Ultimate, specifically with USA Ultimate, for the last 10 years. I lead Ultimate and Mixed and Women's Club, North Carolina, and Seattle. Currently I'm in Seattle, and I'm coaching at Ingram High School, and this will be my 5th year coaching one of the YCC teams, the Club Championship teams. I spend a lot more time coaching and organizing these days than I do playing, but I'm still playing. I'm part of a new Seattle women's team, Seattle Soul, that's starting up this summer. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so I still really engage in that community as well. I made this transition from being more volunteer focused. The kind of coolest part of volunteer stuff that I've gotten to do with USA Ultimate was being involved in co-founding the Girls Ultimate Rebel. And that was a really cool ride because we really got the opportunity to have voices from all over the country kind of weighing in on what is the future of Ultimate like for girls. How can we create more opportunities, and how can we kind of create space for girls to really have a voice in what those opportunities were like. And that was just what got me paid, was really community driven and organized, and those voices really made that movement kind of grow, and that's been really fun to watch. And recently I kind of made that shift more into the board space because as I got more involved in these conversations in the community, I felt like there was a disconnect between kind of the voices in the community and a lot of things that I was hearing from players and from my teammates and from young players, and the work that a lot of people were doing all the time at quarters to make Ultimate awesome. And so kind of those two worlds weren't really aligning or coming together, and I really wanted to have the opportunity to help kind of push on that and create a space for more collaboration and communication and growth kind of in a direction that everyone's grown up and inspired by and fired up by. And I think that the strategic plan happening in 2018, which is what this tour is about, is like kicking off a lot of the ideas that are going to go into that and really getting community's input. It's a really great opportunity for us to kind of to move that way and figure out what that's going to look like and have that feedback. I think tonight's a really great chance to look forward. There are a lot of things that there's feedback on, but I think we're going to focus in on some key aspects and try to take those and get ideas from you all of what can we do to make this next strategic plan really incredible. One thing that has kind of evolved over the course of the tour that I think has been pretty awesome is seeing what the voices in the early part of the tour really did to contribute to how the tour has shaped. Originally, it was set in a certain way and had kind of a few key topics that were really focus points, and had equity, gender equity as one of those. And the feedback we got really early in the tour was that's not going to work because it's not covering equity as a whole, it's not covering diversity as a whole, and also we should be thinking about all these other topics in the context of equity and diversity, right? It's not, Elite Ultimate is not separate from equity and diversity. Youth Ultimate is not separate from equity and diversity. And so one of the really cool things that has happened throughout the tour is we've changed the structure to really create some dialogue around equity and diversity early in the conversation tonight, which you'll hear more about shortly, and use that as a place to have that lens going into these other conversations. And that really was brought on by the community voice saying, hey, we gotta do something different. And so I'm really excited to keep seeing this voice kind of at play and have all of you be a part of that as we move forward into the strategic plan. Tonight we have Kay Rader with us, and she is a facilitator for kind of the entire strategic planning process. I met Kay at the board meeting back in January and had some really great conversations both at the meeting itself and then over dinner about kind of how do we build something together that's really going to be collaborative and really going to grow. And I really loved the conversations we had and the ideas, and she helped kind of some of the prioritization within the board of what we saw as priorities and some of the prioritization within staff. And that's kind of led to some of the key topics that we've been hearing from the community are really hot topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. Kay has a background in sports Her entire career has been focused on sports. She's worked with the Olympic Committee a lot and has a lot of really high-level experience on doing strategic planning for national governing bodies and sports-based organizations. So she brings a wealth of that knowledge to the table to kind of help guide us in this process where Ultimate is growing and also has this really unique set of values. And she's been really great at listening and hearing what those are. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to like have kind of that outside perspective, like hear all these voices and help us try to build something really great. So passing it off to Kay.
Thanks, Heather. Heather Ann came all the way from Seattle to be here tonight, which is pretty amazing. So we appreciate your doing that. And for the staff coming up from Colorado Springs, hop, skip, and a jump up here to Denver. And many thanks to all of you for taking this beautiful evening and coming to share your thoughts with us. I'm going to give you a little brief overview of what we're going to do tonight, but first let's look at the sport of Ultimate because that's what we care about. So I'm going to show you a quick 3-minute video that reflects on the past 50 years and how far the sport has come, which is a great way to set the tone for strategic planning for the next 50 years. So roll it. Not that we need to be reminded, but that's really why we're here, not just to sit around and talk low in an auditorium. We really want to take that passion that you see on the screen and that you do on the playing field and to bring it to the group discussions tonight. So I think that you all know that, as Heather Ann alluded to, this is just one piece of the strategic planning initiative that's going on. It actually started several months ago. How many remember the survey that you got at the end of the year? Did you fill it out? I think you did. I remember your answers. No, no, we're not supposed to know those, who belongs to what answers. But anyway, so that was sort of the first more public initiative. Now we're doing these all across these community conversations across the country, and we're in the home stretch. We have 2 more, New York and Boston, and that's coming up. But there are 11 stops, so thank you for being part of the Denver stop. We really appreciate that. And so what will happen, we're going to tell you tonight, Tom is going to present about 10 minutes on the state of USA Ultimate, if you will, to give you some information about what's going on and more detailed in the clips, although the clips are really cool. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask any questions of him. Then we're going to move right into, as Heather Ann said, some breakout groups about diversity and about equity. And then we're going to have your groups report out. Then we're going to go into some topics that Tom will talk about later. So you can choose which group you'd like to belong in to give us your ideas and opinions. And then toward the end of our meeting, we'll have a general discussion, Q&A, and then give you a chance to weigh in on your ideas and for priorities for the board to consider as they continue to work on the strategic plan. You'll get a chance to actually vote with dots. You just won't believe how exciting that will be. So that's what we're going to do in the evening. We want to respect your schedule. We know it's sort of a school night tonight, but we want to make sure that you have a chance to weigh in on those priorities. In terms of the timetable of the strategic plan, well, the group will be working on it through the rest of the year, and the planned rollout as of right now is to release the strategic plan in the Nationals in 2018, and the actual new plan will begin in 2019. But throughout the process, we will communicate with you and give you updates so you can see how the plan is shaping out. And like I said, there'll be lots of opportunities to weigh in, maybe an additional survey or whatever. So that's really what we're doing in the long term and what we're doing tonight. Any questions about any of that? Okay, great. So we're going to move right on to Tom. Many of you know Tom Crawford. Dr. Crawford, actually. Tom has a double doctorate in high performance and human performance. But what really impresses me more than his long academic credentials and his many years in sports is that he understands that sport has the power to change people's lives. And I know this personally because Tom and I actually worked together at the Olympic Committee. Tom was director of coaching back in the olden days, and he helped actually write the ethics code that many of the sports are bound to these days. And if you know, there's been a lot in the news about coaches and the need for ethics and so forth and how important that is. But he also understands the power of sport and the passion behind it. And so I think he brings a lot to the table. So Tom, tell us what's going on at USA Ultimate.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks very much for coming out tonight. It is a really beautiful night out there. It's hard to come from a beautiful night inside, so thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll try and make it as productive as we can. I'm going to zip through some stuff just to create some context for you on kind of where we've been going, where we are now, and some things to think about in your breakout groups to take advantage of as we continue to try to grow the sport into the future. I did want to follow up on the 50-year thing. Please put on your calendar Nationals in 2018, because we are going to have a big, huge party to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And that's being planned by a separate group right now. Guarantee you that it will be a great time in San Diego, which is a nice place to come, either just for fun or bring your family, plan a vacation around it. So put that in your calendars now, please, because we want to get everybody to come to the 50th celebration. And that's when we'll start talking about the next 50 years through the strategic plan that we built. So let me take you through, well, first I just wanted to reflect for a second. I think I know many of you from the events that we've done in Colorado over the years. I just wanted to reflect a little bit more on what Kay said about why I'm doing this, actually. So sports made a huge difference in my life growing up. I would have been in real trouble if I didn't have sports to help me and guide me with not only I had saints for parents, but I had a lot of coaches that made a huge difference in my life. So that's when I really started to understand and believe in the power of sport. And then after I finished the first part of my schooling, I actually did a ton of work with really disadvantaged kids for about 3 to 5 years. And saw, again, the power of sport, using sport to try to help kids stay out of trouble, which is what worked for me, but also learn some life lessons as well as skills and other things that can help them in the rest of their life. And I watched it happen in incredibly beautiful ways, where individual kids got transformed, families got transformed, and in a couple of cases we actually transformed entire communities through the power of sport. So I really, that's why I'm doing this, because I've had a really, really lucky career. I've worked, as Kay mentioned, in the Olympic movement for a long, long time with all of the Olympic teams. Worked in the NFL, NBA, NHL for more years than I'd like to actually say, been a lot of years. In all of that, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of sport. And while there is a lot of good, there is also some bad and some ugly. And so as much as sports can be transformative and powerful, it can also be degrading and awful in ways that are really kind of sickening. And all kinds of things can start to happen that are really the opposite of what's good about sport. And then I discovered Ultimate. And through all of those years, by the way, and all that work, I had no idea about Ultimate. I didn't know anything about it. I had a niece and a nephew-in-law that constantly talked about it at our family gatherings and talked me into going to check it out. So I went to one event and fell in love with the sport. And it was a club level event, men's, women's mixed, and I stood there for 2 days, and after all of that other experience I had in all those other sports, I was literally blown away. I was like, wow. First, the athletes. Speed, quickness, agility, power, cognitive acuity, endurance on every single play for a whole weekend. Amazing. Incredibly entertaining to watch. But most of all, standing there having seen the good and the bad, the ugly of sport, seeing right in front of me that fierce and intense level of competition, amazing athleticism in a spirit that was just like, whoa, this I've never seen before. This is really, really cool and powerful. And so, decided to dive in. Fell in love, decided to dive in. And I have been working really hard to try to bring some of my skills and experiences to help the sport grow and to do some of the things I'm going to talk about really quickly right now. first want to remind everybody of our mission, because this is a really important touchstone for all of the work that we do. We've got it hanging all over our office. It's to advance the sport of ultimate in the United States by enhancing and promoting the 3 C's. I think this has been the mission long enough now where lots of people are really familiar with it. The next thing is our vision. And right now, this is our vision, that ultimately is widely known, played, and respected in the United States. So known and played and respected in the U.S. as a sport that inspires athletic excellence and integrity among participants and fans. So that's our current vision that is guiding us. This could change. That's part of the whole idea of doing this exercise, is the vision could change and we could say we want to tweak it this way, we want to change it that way. But again, as you do your groups tonight and your discussions, please keep that in mind. I'm going to go through this really quick now, so bear with me. This is the structure that we are currently existing in. And this has evolved quickly over the last few years. And it involves our involvement in the Olympic family, which I'll describe really quickly. But this is the structure that we are trying to build, and we are building right now. At the top, you have the International Olympic Committee, essentially responsible for sport across the world. Right? They look at sport worldwide and try to grow it, improve it, and do all kinds of stuff with it. And they do that through 2 important groups of bodies that they work with regularly. The first group are the federations. So ours is WFDF, the World Flying Disc Federation. WFDF functions just like the other federations that you see up there now under the IOC, as a permanent member of the IOC. Lots of, by the way, constant communication out between IOC and WFDF, because that's how the IOC gets its work done. The other groups that the IOC works through are the Olympic committees. And so we work with the United States Olympic Committee. All of our fellow NGBs around the world work through their Olympic Committee, and then we all work through WFDF. So this is the structure of sport that we are now in. And I want to tell you a little bit about the United States Olympic Committee, because there's a bit of a, not a misnomer, but people don't realize why this is such a really powerful thing for us in the United States. So in the U.S. Olympic Committee really functions as the Ministry of Sport. And all of these groups that you see up here are members of the United States Olympic Committee, just like we are. So the Olympic Committee is not just about identifying really good athletes across sports and putting together Olympic teams. The Olympic Committee is actually the umbrella organization essentially over all of sport in the United States. So you'll notice this includes things like the NCAA, the National Federation of High School, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, etc. The one I want to point out that we're really fired up about right now is an organization called PAL. Anybody ever heard of Police Athletic Leagues? So police athletic leagues do really interesting work. It's basically police officers going into tough communities and trying to develop relationships, particularly with kids, but also families, to do a few things. Keep them out of trouble, develop positive relations between the police officers and the community, and also teach life lessons through sport. They've been doing this for a long, long time. They learned about Ultimate at the last Olympic Congress for the first time. And they are incredibly fired up about the potential that Ultimate has to be a sport that can transform lives in these communities that they go into. So week after next, we are the featured sport at their national convention, and they are going to adopt Ultimate as a sport that they can take into these communities to reach these kids in ways that they're really fired up about. They were like, conflict resolution built right in. Treat everybody with dignity and respect, built right in. Inexpensive, we can do it in the middle of the street if we need to. All we need is some discs. All of those things baked into a sport that is really, really fun for kids to play. So they're going to want to keep playing. So they are now going to adopt Ultimate. That's one example out of all of these different groups of the power of being in the Olympic family. So I want to emphasize that if we get on the Olympic program, that'll be a watershed moment for the sport, and it'll be amazing. But it's not the real power of being in the Olympic family. This is the real power of being in the Olympic family, is all of the relationships we get to build and the exposure we get to build for the sport with groups that didn't know much about us before. If you want to learn more about all of this stuff, by the way, feel free to come to the breakout that I'm going to do, and we can get into a lot more detail. So we are the national governing body. So we function like all of these other national governing bodies under the United States Olympic Committee and under our individual federations, as does Canada, Australia, etc. around the world. There are now, by the way, 74 members of WFDF. We got to get that number up to 75, and we're really, really close. Here's something I thought you might find interesting. Here's how we look compared to some other sports right now. So we have about 55,000 members, growing at between 4.5% and 5% per year. And you can see how that compares to some other sports that are in the Olympic family. Our growth rate is actually good relative to most of the sports, and really good compared to a lot of sports that have gone flat and are going down. But you can also see the upside here of how much we can grow this amazing sport. But you can also simultaneously see the competition. I mean, there are a lot of kids choosing swimming and lacrosse and rugby as their sport of choice, and we've got to figure out a way, I hope, to entice them into at least trying Ultimate so that they can discover what an amazingly cool sport it is. So you can see the upsides, and we used to be side by side with rugby. Like, we were almost the exact for the longest time. Then they got on the Olympic program, and they are now taking off, exploding like crazy. So we got some catching up to do there. So this is who makes up USA Ultimate. There's a lot of different folks that we interact with on a regular basis. I think the absolute key group from our perspective are the volunteers, and thank you to many of you, if not all of you, because I'll bet many, if not all of you, are already volunteers helping the sport grow, and we can't get anything done without you. So our sincere thanks for being the fantastic volunteers you are. And please keep doing that, because we desperately need the help. The group that I think is going to be the most important going forward is second from the left on the top. If we're going to be successful competing with some of those sports that you just saw and growing to those levels, we are going to need more coaches. That's the way youth sport grows. And so some of you are going to have to stop playing this wonderful sport and start coaching. And I know lots of you are doing that as well, and thank you very much. But I encourage all of you to at least think about that in the future, because that's, if there's one thing holding us back, that's one quick example of stuff that's going to hold us back. Ultimate Foundation, I think I'll hold off talking about this and explain it to anybody that wants to come to the group. This is a really important initiative, separate organization, 501c3, that is going to raise funds outside of our operating budget to fund programs like GUM, Play It Forward, which is basically a scholarship program for kids that have economic challenges. Our goal is to grow this foundation to a very significant organization that can do a lot of funding of the state organizations, the affiliates, GUM, other programs that we create, and so that we can push resources down into the communities and more at the local level than we ever had before. And you'll see that that's our strategy. So what we're building right now are state organizations all over the United States. We're going to do about 3 or 4 per year. Love to see Colorado be one of the next ones, by the way. And we are directing a lot of funding, a lot of resources, and a lot of support to these organizations. So essentially what our strategy is push resources out to the local communities and not try to do stuff from Colorado Springs, and really start serving as a national governing body while we help create state organizations that also stimulate affiliates at the local level, so that, like, for example, in Colorado, there are strong affiliates all over the state that are all working together to grow the sport all over the state. And we're doing this now literally state by state by state. So that is kind of the strategy. Please keep that in mind as you go into your breakouts, that's the sort of structure that we're working toward. And then obviously at the local level, teams, lots of programs, all of these programs that we create and programs that you create. Because what our hope, and we know this will happen, is that Colorado is going to come up with some really cool ideas. And then when they come to the national convention with all of the other state organizations and affiliates, there's going to be fabulous best practices that go on. And everybody starts learning from each other, sharing really good information. But the other thing we know, and I'll just keep zipping through this, and again, this is what I was just talking about, each local group creating their own thing, whatever works best for them. We also want the state organizations and affiliates to be the major hosts of our events so that we can keep getting quality of events higher and higher and higher. And we'll do that through the constant communication we have, the certifications that we create, and this is already having an impact. But this is where we want to see those affiliates and state orgs actually running the programs. And so this is the structure. And one of the things I wanted to describe lastly is the reason we have this strategy in place is we think that the way Ultimate is going to grow and look in Colorado is going to be way different than Florida. And it's going to be way different than Ohio. It was interesting, we were in Seattle, had a really cool conversation in Seattle, and one of my breakout groups was a woman that had just moved there from Ohio. And we were in a kind of an interesting discussion about this and some other things, and she interrupted the discussion to say to her colleagues from Seattle, you don't have any idea what it's like in Ohio. We don't have any of this stuff that you're talking about. It's completely different. And they were like, huh, you're right, we don't really think about that. So it is going to, every single state and every single affiliate is probably going to look a little bit different because of the different challenges they face or opportunities. We're going to get into some high schools, right? We're going to get into the interscholastic league in some states. We won't in other states. That's a big, huge difference in how youth goes. So that's where we're headed. That's the structure we're now living within. Okay, I don't know how I think. Do I have any, Tom? Do you want to?
Yeah, let's just see, does anybody have a quick question for Tom? And then we'll go into our breakout groups. Breakout groups, we hope not to break up.
So now that the bond and then some of the foundation is gone, right, is it intentional that we're considering it to be in all of those different spots? Or is it?
Can everybody hear what he just said?
We would love to have.
Tom, can you repeat what he just said?
I think if I got it right, is gum be everywhere? Is that a good summary?
In how the structure in your mind, or how you guys came up with the structure, you have it under programs, you have it in Ultimate Foundation, you have it in events, you have it in all of those situations. You also had it under, not affiliate, but it was in several locations. And so is it going to be something that's drawing money from the foundation, that is drawing money from the general fund? Is it getting funded from all sorts of ways and getting supported from all sorts of ways?
We hope so. Yes. Yeah, all of those different things you just mentioned could all be sources of funding for GOM and play it forward and etc. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great,
Thank you very
Tom.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Today is going to set up the exercise for the breakout groups and let you know what's on it.
So, as I mentioned in the beginning, and as mentioned throughout, we've kind of changed the structure a little. So this next portion is really focused on discussion around equity and diversity in Ultimate. And the really big question we're trying to ask for the strategic plan is, you know, if Ultimate is an inclusive community, then how does diversity and equity manifest in our sport for the next 5 years? That's a really big question. So instead of kind of starting with that big question, we broke into 4 smaller questions, and we're gonna have 4 little breakout groups where we're gonna have 20 minutes to talk about kind of smaller questions that lead into that bigger question. So we have a different person facilitating each of those groups to kind of keep the conversation moving there. At the end of that 20 minutes, we'll be able to highlight, kind of each group will highlight, you know, one really key item from their conversation. We're going to come back out here and share those together, and then that'll kind of help us set a lens to move forward into the next part of the night. And so the facilitators for the equity and diversity portion are myself,
Julia's going to be here. I'm going to be on the other side of this wall. Opie is helping us out tonight. He's going to facilitate one of these. And then Stacy is our fourth facilitator. So Stacy's going to be up top there. Opie's going to be kind of right where she's hanging out, and Julia back there, and I'll be over there. So just pick one of us, and we want to try to get even groups as much as possible. So try to kind of split up amongst the four of us, and we'll go from there.
All the same questions.
There are 4 different questions here. I can do it for free of what everyone's covering.
But there'll be
And
discussion.
we'd like to have at least 3 plus the facilitators in one group.
So OB's group is going to be talking about how do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level and at the national level. Julia will be talking about, as a national governing body, what needs to happen in our daily work to be a leader in sport in terms of inclusion. Stacy will cover how do we educate ourselves in our communities to be allies, and I will be covering what are some tangible ways we can honor our commitment to gender equity. So those are the 4 equity discussions that'll happen. And then we'll come back together and kind of recap and then move on to topics that all have these equity things interwoven in them. That's being honored and shared.
So one thing that I've been thinking about, and Tom mentioned it here, was the need for coaches. I know the conversation comes up a lot that there aren't enough women coaches, or there could be more, I guess. And what I often think about is that it's not unusual to have a male presence on a women's team or a mixed team. It's not unusual for a guy to coach women. It's something that we see a lot across all levels. And it's very unusual to see a woman involved on a men's team, or in some cases a mixed team. And so I was talking to somebody that played junior worlds, and one of his coaches on a boys team, a U19 boys team, and one of his coaches was a woman. And he said that opened his eyes to so much in the sport, and that was a really impactful experience for him. So with that conversation, I was thinking about how there could be more opportunities for women to coach men, and what that exposure brings to those teams. And I think a tangible way and an easy way to start that is simply to invite a woman coach to a men's team to run a practice or clinic or some small skill. They can commit to 2 practices in a college season. And that shows the team that the men's coach honors and respects that women's coach and what she's doing. And then she gets the opportunity to coach in front of men. And that opportunity for her is really valuable to get extra coaching experience. I think it's just a really easy, small, tangible way we can start getting more experience from women's coaches and getting more exposure from men's players to women's coaches.
That's great. I really like the comment about the national team. I think that for me kind of set off some bells of, having more women involved at the national team level, coaching all genders. Is definitely a component there. How do you think USA, and this can kind of be more of a group question, how do you think USA Ultimate can facilitate what you're talking about kind of more at the local level, at the team level, because those are often teams that are independent from the organization?
I'm not a coach, but I'm just curious, what are some of the barriers right now to becoming a coach? Like, what makes it hard, and what can we, or you guys, make easier for people who are trying to become coaches?
So there's already a kind of if you do one of the coach trainings, there's already a kind of reimbursement component for women coaches to get more women coaching. So that exists, but that hasn't been used to the extent that
Paid for it.
well, you should.
I tried before. I thought I might expire actually.
I know people know about that as a membership.
Yeah.
Well, that's been coaching and didn't know about it. I actually didn't know about that programming.
Great.
And that kind of brings me to a thought that holding up those opportunities, you know what I mean?
Right.
But also holding up those women who are doing it now. And one of those is being nominated to the Hall of Fame in 2018. And that might be a really cool thing to rally around.
highlighting women who are in that role in a way that from the organization perspective, not just like at a local perspective. How do we really celebrate women who are out coaching?
I mean, I think reimbursing them at the local level is a great way to do it. But it's got to be done from both ends of the spectrum. Don't you?
I think that program is not just for women who coach, but for anybody that coaches women.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's fun.
Does that include Next?
I'm not 100% sure on
I would
that.
assume it probably does.
Yeah.
But that's a great question. What else?
So I don't have a lot of knowledge on the youth level. Are there mixed YCC? Is there a mixed YCC scene that's also happening? Okay. And that's something that I would assume. Are there many female coaches for that as well at this point, or is it kind of a mixed bag, or still
Here
more
it's
men
been
at
mixed
that
in
point?
the past.
Here it has
One
been?
year.
Okay.
Yeah. It's usually mixed gender
Yeah.
coaches. Yeah, here it is.
Do you think that it's happening more at the grassroots level than at the league level? There are more women coaching at the grassroots level, or the, beginner levels at the youth level? Well, not even just youth, but
Beginner. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen that, if you look at club, if you look from like middle school, high school, college club, right? I think that you see a decrease in women coaches from early to late.
So I started playing mixed, only having played mixed, but my experience having a male coach was like, he really encouraged me specifically to like step up and have a voice as like a woman on the team. And so I wonder how much we can focus on that when we're teaching coaches, especially in like a mixed setting. I think that there's a general perception that like women want to be invited to the table and aren't necessarily going to step up to it. And so creating more opportunities and having leadership focusing on that.
I'm still stuck on. I really like the idea of encouraging opportunities for female coaches to come into more male, men's team settings or men's elite team settings to run practices or something like that. But I'm not really sure how support from the governing body can help that. I mean, maybe it is something starts at a local level and then highlighting it from the governing body, and so maybe that's a communication between the local level of that's something that we decide to start trying to move towards a little bit at a local level, and then being able to have that highlighted so that overall, the overall community, you can see that. But I think that's a really interesting concept because that's definitely, you really don't see that. I mean, especially in any sort of like college to elite men's, there definitely aren't necessarily women in that role. I think that's a really interesting concept, for sure.
To the extent that EOC does the national team things, I think that's an opportunity to lead by example and not just highlight what's already happening grassroots, but create those situations. And then because those are bringing people from all over the country, that can then trickle down. And it can be reinforced as like a thing that's being done with intention, that people are going to bring those back. A lot of those people who play on the national teams are leaders in their local communities.
I don't know what it would look like either. If it would be some kind of campaign, maybe this goes to more the ally group, but do you want to be an ally? Here are the top 3 things that you can do. Number 1, have a clinic where you have a woman teaching a skill. Or many coaches come in, or on a regular basis you have women coaches coming in to do those things. Number 2, and they aren't just like, retweet something great about a women's player. It's like, this is like real hard skills that both parties benefit from, and then that woman coach gets to be in front of the men's team gets to hear that voice. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's like just a PSA type of thing, and then teams can or can't do it, and they can, send photos of that happening, and then it can be sort of like something that builds upon itself. I don't know what the execution looks like, but I think, as far as when I thought tangible, this seems like a really easy thing. I just don't know how USAU would be an actor in it.
I'd like the comment on resources as well. Are there other ideas for resources around gender equity that would be helpful in kind of really supporting that mission in the community?
I just thought of ESPN3
and really pushing that, at least have an equal of how many games. I don't know how many women's games and mixed games and compared to how many men's games, but really highlighting and giving that opportunity for people to see the elite women play. That's going to really motivate people to play at that level. We just had a women's group get together and watch a game, and it was awesome. I had a bunch of them out there.
Thinking about resources at that higher level, and I think you made a good point. Sorry, Alicia, about women, fairly or not, socialized or not, need to be invited, whereas the men will step into the role. So if there's a call for a coaching clinic, when a call goes out and the ratio is 8-2, men to women, somebody at some level needs to, and it needs to pass down the chain of command, look from the national organizer to the local organizer for that clinic. Hey, you need to go out and recruit women, and you need to find out who they are and ask them personally. It doesn't have to be like face to face, but like an email. Hey, this would be good for you. Have you thought about coming? Sometimes that's what people need to hear, and so the generic call for entries isn't going to get the ratio, and it actually needs to be some people being tasked with seeking out and asking people to join in or take advantage of those resources.
I also wonder if the curriculum could be tweaked to be more effective. I'm trying to remember really what it was, and the fact that I don't remember much about it, sends a lot.
So
I know
the coaching, you're talking about the coaching?
Yeah, we read the gender equity statement, I'm pretty sure. But like the hot issues of ESPN and women coaches at elite levels, we didn't get anywhere near that stuff. Or never mind, how you approach a female athlete versus a male athlete versus a transgendered athlete versus, you know what I mean, and I think one of the coolest things about Ultimate is that if you read the different governing bodies' ethics statements, USA Ultimate is one of the best. It really is. It's a lot better than most.
And building off of that, how to communicate to your players that you're coaching what gender equity is and looks like within the sport, and how they can, tangible items for them to then be able to be a part of that. I think that would be something that would be really interesting too. I know even, the college women that I coach, I don't think they really understand. They know that it's a trending topic right now, and I'm sure if we talked to our counterpart men's team, they would really struggle to have any sort of tangible items of what that even means, or what they can do to maybe help build up, some of their female counterparts, anything like that. So, I don't know if maybe an additional component in coaching clinics and workshops. I think for me that would be something that would be really helpful to know a little bit more how to communicate that and build that with the people that I coach.
Is there a coaching development program that's run at the national level? What can be done there to incentivize more people to attend, or people of varying backgrounds?
The two college teams at Wisconsin recently had a conversation about gender equity after a sort of incident that needed a conversation, but I think they shared a bit about that on social media, but like highlighting stuff like that or tapping into them to kind of speak about what that was and how that went. I don't know if that's used at Ultimate's shop, but I think highlighting things like that are going on, you kind of need to show people that you can do that, and other people are doing this, and maybe you don't need an incident to have that conversation.
Yeah, like a guide for if you're a sibling teams who have leaders on the teams who want to have that conversation. I wouldn't really know where to start, and probably even less so, I would think, if I was a leader on a dudes team. Like, where do I even start? This isn't my thing, but I want to help, but I don't want to butt in. Like a discussion guide, or how you convene this thing, and how you have this conversation. What's even the language that you use so that you're inclusive and not pissing people off right out of the gate. Because I think that's why a lot of people get leery about it, is they want to step on toes or use the wrong terminology or say the wrong word, whatever. Some kind of guide for the men's and women's team at a college or club, level to convene that.
Yeah, let's say students, and it's a resource for anybody to access, not necessarily just someone attending a clinic or something like that. I think that's a good idea. Because then anybody can start that conversation, find this guide, you know, I mean, who knows how well it will go with just, you know, reading the guide, but at the same time, that's at least a place to start, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
Picturing like the 1980s workplace instructional video.
Yeah.
Today we were talking about sexual harassment. So something like that.
Put it in,
Yeah.
put it in the VHS.
Yeah, put your hand directly into the threshing machine.
Yeah, sometimes I do feel like there are good resources, but they are exclusive to like attending a clinic or something like that. And
Yeah, or you just don't know about them until you get involved in something like this. And
sure.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about coaching and also about, you know, ESPN was mentioned and kind of women's coverage. We've talked about kind of how that coaching is at a national level and then also kind of guidelines within the coaching module and things to support college teams at different levels. Let's take a second and just think about different divisions. So like, are there things at the youth level we can think about? And then let's think about, you know, club level that kind of are tangible and fall into the same conversation. On those thoughts.
I mean, I think at the youth level, it's very similar to the higher levels, where if your coaches are all male, or if you aren't exposed to the fact that there are heavily women playing the sport, then it's discouraging, right? Like you're never going to see that path forward. So I think along the same lines, like highlighting that to women, like having more involvement across levels is probably the biggest thing, right? If you're young and you're playing sports, you want someone to look up to, you want someone to be, and if you only see, you know, the men's teams playing, then you're like, screw this.
What are ways we can better highlight those role models for young players?
I like that we're starting to do like teams that are traveling and highlighting, and I wonder if we could do like more to support youth being able to come to those events and seeing those, like actually going to those highlighted events. I know that like a lot of times that advertising is like maybe hard to come by if you're not on Facebook. And so potentially the opportunity to like bring youth coaches into those events.
Excuse me, here's your friendly reminder. It's going fast. You have 5 minutes, and we want to have your one key point on the poster board because we're going to hang that up there for all to see. Thank you.
We got the time condense your page and a half.
All right, so let's try to kind of pick from these what we really want to highlight. We talked a lot about coaching. We talked about coach modules. We talked about, you know, having women coaching men's teams, leading by example at the national team level for that, all the way down to kind of getting local levels and encouraging that. Coaching module that really focuses on gender equity, you know, how to coach a mixed team, how to coach in a girls' environment. Yeah, great.
Very good.
And then, you know, also discussion, conversation guides for people who want to engage in conversations around gender equity. And then equal coverage in ways to really highlight both genders in the sport.
Yeah, so all that.
So, you know,
Sum up in one word.
I think that we can kind of write those top key ones down, but let's figure out, you know, what's our really take-home message.
So you mentioned exposure.
Exposure.
I think if I could think of one word to capture all that, it would be exposure. So it would be, you know, capturing all these things is introducing teams to the new coaches is a form of exposure. Introducing teams to these conversations is a form of exposure. And all the rest of the things that you said. So
Yeah, I was thinking exposure, leadership, and resources. Everything falls under at least one of those, if not multiple. 3 words? All right.
I think we should come up with it now. We should probably get it.
Exposure, leadership, resources, and leadership.
Exposure at all levels too.
Exposure, yeah. Let's see.
If you just throw water in there, it's just gonna lure.
There we go. Now you're thinking.
Because it is important to give people resources to have conversations, but it's also important for them to see that when those are already happening, and see that how those, not just like, this is how you do it, but well, I already know it.
Okay, exposure. Not all of those. And then leadership, exposure, resources, and leadership?
Yeah.
Okay. Summarize here.
One word.
Resources were equity discussion. Equity discussion guides.
Like reimbursements or programs for female coaches, whatever that was.
Yeah, kind of spreading the word about that, or like
Exposure to said resources.
to existing resources.
Damn it, she's right.
Equity discussion guides, resources
What was it,
were
coaching
also coaching module.
In the curriculum or of workshops and
discussion guides again all. Leadership. What do you want to put under there?
Like national teams.
yeah, and holding up coaches women coaches who coach national level teams.
Oh, you guys are wrapping it up. Awesome. And you're writing so clearly. We love that.
You do have very nice handwriting. Exposure. Anything else from exposure that we missed? All of those. Intro women coaches. Those seems to make coverage. Let's get it.
Yeah.
Hey, can I have a volunteer who can kind of do the quick recap, quick summary? You can do it. So if there's, hopefully you designated a volunteer. If you didn't, hopefully someone will volunteer themselves from the group. So kind of less than 1 minute, just a recap of what was really the key take-home message from your group as like some big idea, and then, you know, if you need to break that into 3 little parts like our group did, that's cool too. But really try to keep it under a minute. So where's our volunteer? We'll start there. So our group was the gender equity, what are tangible ways that we can go somewhere.
Okay, everybody, see? Clock start already? Okay, so we broke this down to exposure, resources, and leadership. The nice part is the exposure piece kind of covers all 3 of those things. So these are tangible things that on the local level and the national level we can do for gender equity, for the cause of gender equity. So one of the first things came from a conversation that I had with a player that played on a junior nationals team, a boys team, a U19 team that had a female coach. And he said that opened his eyes up to a lot of things and also gave him exposure to a female coach. So one of the things is just exposing men's and women's teams and mixed teams to more women in leadership. So So this could be as simple as, if you're Johnny Bravo, you set aside 2 practices where a women coach comes in and teaches a skill. And any team can do this. It doesn't have to be committing to a season. It could be just a couple practices. The benefit that has is also getting that woman coach her experience coaching for the men, which a side conversation I just had is that experience can be intimidating. So one of the resources that we can provide are how to do that, how to initiate equity discussions. So for college teams, for example, sibling teams, how do you mediate a conversation about gender equity? So something like a 1980s like workplace video that you can create to pass out to these teams so that they have a way to start that conversation, because it's a hard conversation to have. And other exposure, we talked about media being one of the things, having equal coverage. I know that's a pretty hot topic. And then, let's see, other resources USC you can provide to grassroots level or just like coaching modules. And then finally, the leadership, the national teams taking a leadership role in this, and on their teams, within their teams that have women coaches or coaches that coach mixed teams, talking about what that experience is like. So I think that covers it all. Group, did we get there?
I'm Julia, Director of Finance and Development at USA Ultimate. I was laughing as he was talking because I realized I didn't finish my thought. What needs to happen in our daily work? Sorry. So we came up with gaps, goals, and resources, and I asked Finn if I could call him out and bring him up here, and he said no. So then I was going to ask Jeff Burgett, and I don't see him. So to me, I will explain this. So basically what we're talking about is identifying where identify where there are gaps. Among resources given to groups, including, listed in the handout, socioeconomic, gender, divisional, any of those groups. And then come up with tangible goals to actually fill in those gaps, reach, rather than just saying we're going to get more girls at, YCC, what are the goals, and then how do we reach them, and then did we reach them? And so not just saying let's do better, let's actually come up with numbers, figure out ways to hit those numbers, do better. And then put resources where we have the gaps, where we want to achieve our goals. So, I like the ease of the gaps, goals, and resources. I thought that was very fun.
Okay, so we talked about how we can foster equity and diversity at the local level and national level. We ended up focusing and talking a lot about female representation at the local level. A lot of that was already covered, talking about resources for coaches who may not feel as comfortable because they think that they're underqualified or don't have enough experience. So we talked about, maybe we can put together some kits or sample practice plans that they can model their own practice plans after, as well as maybe some guidance for what kind of language to use, what kind of terminology, especially if they're coaching kids who have no background. And that sort of also connects to the challenge of a lot of coaches who come from more affluent communities tend to be the ones who also have free time to coach, right? And they tend to gravitate toward like communities, also affluent communities, which leaves the lower income communities behind, and they often don't have coaches. So, maybe figuring out a way to, sort of divert those resources, spread them out to the communities that actually need them instead of sort of the rich getting richer. And we also talked about how we can get more females to coach as well. And then some of the things we talked about with the initiatives that Brew is running with RAL, which is
an initiative that tries to empower women to take on more leadership roles, whether that's captaining at the league level or coaching a club team, or sorry, well, maybe a football team, but as well as youth. And some of the tactics that they've used are, personally reaching out to people that they think have potential and saying, sort of coaxing them, and then letting them know that, you don't have to have years and years of experience necessarily. And I think that's often a barrier for women. They sort of put themselves down and keep themselves, like, self-select out from that pool, which was actually interesting because I actually just had a conversation yesterday about how I felt like I didn't have enough experience to apply for like U20 like coaching, and it was interesting to hear those like parallel sentiments at all levels. So I guess the general takeaway is making women feel more empowered regardless of their level of skill or experience to just get their feet wet and just.
Hi, my name's Nikki. Our question was about being an ally in the community. We narrowed it down into a few take-home points here. The first one was about outreach, and specifically around youth outreach. We talked a lot about young people who are missed or leave the sport because they don't go on to play at the college level. And so potentially coming up with like an alternative to the I have to play at the elite college level path, whether it be a pipeline program for club teams to do outreach and engage with young people, or resources to start new club teams, just to keep young people who don't have college as an option engaged with the sport. We also talked about you can't be what you can't see, so trying to really elevate the diversity we have at the elite level. And we talked about organizational readiness, which we kind of said needs to happen simultaneously as we do this inclusion work. That if you walk into club tryouts and you're the only transgender, you're the only black person who's there, like, how does that make you feel? How are we equipped as an organization to have those conversations and to build community and to ensure that folks who do walk through our doors feel like this is the community for them? And that kind of ties into our last point, which is building community through retention and focusing on building that community, having open doors, and having going back to like the social roots of Ultimate, where it's a place where it's folks' social outlet. And what was brought up was that for a lot of people, they came to Ultimate because they didn't fit into other niches in college or in high school. So making sure that that's there. That's still the case now, and that continues to be the case in the future.
Thanks everyone, and thanks for being part of that conversation. I think that having some of these conversations around challenging topics really does create an opportunity for us to look through a different lens moving forward. And Casey's going to talk about the next part of the night. Hopefully we can take this lens that we just kind of popped through in our groups and bring it forward into the other topics. So, thanks.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you all. So hold on to those good creative ideas, and especially the good handwriting. That was awesome. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to have you break into small groups again, and we're going to have 5 topics. And what we want you to do is choose the topics that resonate with you. And Tom is going to give you an overview of what those topics are in a minute. But what we want to do is make sure that there are at least 3 people in a group plus the facilitator. So in order to facilitate that, what I want to do is call each of the 5 group facilitators up forward. So that's going to be Tom, it's going to be Will, it's going to be Josh, Heather Ann, Andy and Stacy, come forward. And so Tom, if you would tell us what those topics are and who's facilitating each one of those topics. We may not need the screen, that's just, I do. Here they are. Yeah.
So here are your choices for breakouts. First is sort of follow up on the Olympic structure and opportunities related to the Olympic dream and what that can mean for the sport going forward. Any challenges or concerns that you might have about that. Next one is brand. How do we improve the USA Ultimate brand in two ways? And this ought to be a fast discussion, but both internally, a lot of people see USA Ultimate, they don't necessarily think really positive things about us. At least that's what I've heard. We'd like to try to change that if we could. So some help on how we could do that. And then also externally, we want to continue to try to get Ultimate as a sport to be really highly thought of by other organizations and sports. So how do we project the right brand to those people? Next one is youth. This is huge. Basically, it's how do we grow youth? What's the best way to grow youth?
Now let's get the bachelor's on.
Or we could just watch some TV. Next one is AUDL. That's going to be led by Will. We have a statement out there right now about the AUDL, a position statement that we've had out there for a couple of years. That's sort of going to be the core part of the discussion is, do we need to change that? Do we need to revisit it? What should we be doing as far as a relationship with the AUDL? And then the final one is sort of elite level play within USA Ultimate. What should that look like? Should that look the way the Triple Crown Tour looks right now? Should we be considering changes? What should that look like so that the players are excited about it and potential fans will also be excited about it? So those are your five. And the five, again, Olympic is going to be right up there in front. Brand is right on the other side of that wall. If you're interested in brand, youth is right here. AUDL is up top for AUDL, and Elite Pro with Heather Ann is right here, same place she was before.
Thoughts by writing down. If anybody's like that, I was going to suggest that person do it. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't. The way I've done this a couple of times, I'm not going to actually take notes either. So what I'm basically thinking is we have a group discussion. At the end, we sort of agree on what we want to put down as our final points, and that's really all. I think, from my perspective, we need to write. If that's telling me to write. Okay, so for youth structure, the way I sort of framed this was looking at our list there of programs that USA Ultimate has some brands established for. 6 of those programs, there's 22. 6 of those programs are youth-specific programs. 9 of them have a fairly heavy youth focus. And by fairly heavy youth focus, I mean things like the state orgs, the affiliate model, the national teams all have like strong youth components. We want those organizations to be establishing youth. National teams have youth national teams, U20, that kind of thing. The foundation will be doing a lot of youth promotion, but those aren't exclusive. So that's 15 out of 22, that's roughly 2/3. And that's not to say that you can quantify an organization's commitment to something, but there is a strong commitment to youth, and this is not so much like just an ultimate sport in general as a strong emphasis on youth play. So with that in mind, we're not sort of, and we all know we're not where we want to be, especially relative to other sports, with youth play and youth structure. So the sort of overarching question that I didn't have written anywhere else is for us to talk about, what are the best investment opportunities in youth ultimate that will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood? Those last 3 goals are 3 example goals. I haven't thought that we should those should be our only competitive opportunities. More people growth. They got to keep playing when they become adults. Those are nice to have. To me, it's really about what are the best opportunities in youth ultimate. Those 2 things. And what I would love to do is just listen to ideas that you guys don't. Ideas off each other, challenge each other, that kind of thing. And then again, at the end, we'll sort of write down what we came up with. Anybody want to dive into it sort of right off the bat?
Get into schools.
Yeah.
So we're basically at the youth level. So everybody knows, I'm assuming people that are listening. no, we're at the club stage. We're not actually, because of the school sponsored sport for the most part. I heard of one school when I was in Texas, it was a middle school, and they actually had ultimate program as a school period. And I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. But I've only heard that once in the time that I've been around. So actually penetrating, getting into schools with ultimate, having a program, that way it kind of legitimizes that as an option for kids rather than kids just being like, yeah, there's this cool other little hobby you can do. It's like, it's all of us from, this group that go to this school that are playing here, which isn't always the case actually. Sometimes they pull from, which is my program, high school. We pull from other schools that don't have enough kids. So for us, they're like, a lot of kids see this. This is another little option as a hobby if I don't have another sport going on, but it would legitimize everything if we were actually in the school as a school program, which I know a lot easier said than done. We're just like, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's go do that right now. Doesn't quite happen that way. So my thought process as far as growing that is two different levels. One, getting ambassadors in schools that aren't maybe they're not top players. Maybe they are. Just people that are involved with schools. Like I don't have any affiliation with any school aside from a volunteer coach at the for a program. But looking for those people that are like, yeah, I definitely want my kids doing something that's really productive, that's athletic, that focuses on spirit of the game. That's our big draw. We can say, hey, look, we have this sport, and it's focused all around kids being accountable for their own spirit and playing by rules of being treating each other fairly and stuff like that. And then get ambassadors in the schools that say, hey, yes, promote this, promote this, promote this. That's one thought, and then my other thought is continue with so we have learn to play clinics, push that even more on young kids. And I say push, that sounds like a little aggressive, but make those opportunities, make more opportunities for those kids to see it. Because if you have a bunch of kids seeing the sport when they're really young, and all those kids have access to it, there'll be more kids that want it or that will ask for that in their schools. If you don't really get exposed to it until you get to high school, and then high school you're like, hey, there's this other cool thing, neat, let's do that. But if kids see it when they're really young, this is awesome. Whenever they get to middle school, they're like, I wish I had this program. So if you've got that demand from kids, rather than the few of us that here, like, yeah, this would be awesome. If you have a bunch of kids asking for it, it's probably going to happen. I'm thinking.
I think maybe as a monetary concept, for the best investment is if we actually develop curriculum. If we actually develop some curriculum that can be used for a multi-year concept for, this is a month in your gym class concept for building of skills. But it also has to have the corollary where it teaches the gym teachers how to teach and teaches them the skills. Because if we get a program like that in and we get a school district to buy into that curriculum and they feed it into their elementary programs, they feed it into their middle school programs, they feed it into their high school programs. We have touched thousands of kids and they've learned some skill. And so just money-wise, if we actually develop effective curriculum, because right now in the coach's book and in whatnot, there is in 12 lessons and in just little bits, but if we actually develop a curriculum that teaches about the skills so that they can go from 0 to sort of play, or 0 to I understand the concept of the basic game, that would open up the doors, and that curriculum can then just be passed this school and that school and that school.
It's easier for schools to buy into when they see when there's standard. This is what we have.
Yeah. And if it gets taken care of, or we look and match it up to educational, the curriculum standards, the objectives that they would have to do, and get those grade level standards for that thing. And then we go into district by district maybe and have a clinic or a professional development that is focused on PE teachers and people who are interested in it. And so that we can get the PE teacher, but you can also get the person who played Ultimate in high school themselves. Now they are teaching at a high school, but they don't really feel like they would have the skills to get a program started, or even just teach a proper lesson for getting them to play well.
I think one of the things that's really important is hardest thing, at least in my experience?
It's because everyone's been trained how to play all those other sports, and that's an integral part of it. You never have a PE teacher like get to that basketball unit and be like, I don't really know how to teach anything about basketball. But I speak to the teachers at my school. Like, I'm not really sure, like I can throw this.
Yeah.
But that other one, what do I even do with my hand?
Yeah, but I think there's a really different mindset being a coaching basketball, and I think that's the hardest thing. Teachers who have been trained to teach, it's a really hard teacher thing. It's hard to teach your parents too.
I think I've heard it's especially daunting the younger you're asking a kid to self-officiate, right? Like, the older a human gets, the more they've learned how to like be an autonomous individual. Younger kids, they're very much opinions, right? It's a challenge.
So I keep having thoughts around youth that depend on this growth, right? Like I have this deep concern about the way our youth competitive play functions. Is it's sort of like the very best high school basketball players are all on these traveling teams, and the very best high school baseball players are on these traveling teams, and they focus on a single sport and they invest tons of resources and they work for like basketball. There's money coming in externally, but it's feeding into this like single sport focus, which I feel like people generally agree is probably bad for kids. And I have this concern that Ultimate is trying to compete for those single sport athletes, and maybe there's a way for us to sort of be that. I think originally Ultimate was that thing that Minnesota State University was for, that it was their primary school, that they were doing something else. How can we win more athletes and get them sort of doing something else? And it was spinning in my mind too, if we could grow, we could pull our sport away from this huge investment if you want to play youth competitively. Because right now you have to fly across the country and play the best tournament. But if you can play in great tournaments around the state, wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know how we get there, right? That's like the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
Is that part of, because like right now our high school structure, we have the mixed season and then we have the single gender season. And then we have summer for YCC.
Right.
And then you have,
and now it's
mixed. And then there's that winter bit where you maybe don't, but you're probably encouraged to play some winter league if you can.
And then like, are we turning out our committed athletes?
Somewhat, especially in smaller programs, it's harder to get.
It's chicken and an egg, right? Like you sort of need critical mass to make things work efficiently, and I don't think we're at that critical.
Yeah.
So I'm more talking about a goal that requires like critical mass. But
would it be, in your mind, would it be good for USA you to focus on specific states? Like we're going to grow the Minnesota scene so that it can go out to Minnesota, and like Vermont is the one that's trying to have a big.
Yeah, do you guys know about that? Their actual principals, athletic across the state, have adopted it as a sport in Vermont. That says Vermont is a tiny state in population,
but for all the high schools in Vermont,
but it's a high school. It's what we consider the first, state to incorporate Ultimate as a part of it.
And so should USAU focus on Vermont and grow the Vermont League as like the model league, and then have their secondary focus now be Minnesota, and have that be their hopeful second seed, and then just start going around that way. And as we get more people, start planting seeds in different spots.
Yeah, I don't think that's a terrible idea, and especially since it's something that is new as far as the structure of what we're saying we're trying to do. Like Vermont's the first one. If you just try to jump into, all right, USA, we're going to do this. If you don't really succeed in what you're doing, you crash and burn, and you kind of set yourself back. If you do just like small little steps like that, like hey, we can focus, we can do a great job here, and then learn how to do it here, we can do it somewhere else. And now we've done it in a couple places. Now we can, so I agree. I think that's a good game plan for that.
right? In high schools, football's played in the fall, baseball's played in the spring, basketball's played in the winter. Is that not true for sports, or is there just not?
It's not true for all sports. It's not true for all sports. Because like women's soccer is in the fall in some states and in the spring in other states, and the same for mixed and single gender alternate. They swap between each year. So I think that Washington State has their single genders in the fall, and then many of the other ones have their single genders in the spring.
And that was probably happenstance through like what was going on in the state between like just as teams started and they figured out what they did and it just happened back.
But I think a little bit of like you were alluding to kids that play multiple sports. So did you have a lot of kids playing this sport that also played another sport? Well, then let's have them in different seasons so those kids can.
We draw soccer players.
So your soccer girls are playing women.
It's hard. So during each ultimate season, it's like I see these kids and then I see these kids, and sometimes they're allowed, and sometimes they don't even show up because they're like, this is so I don't really know. Like I'd rather just do this sport. So one thing that I was going to mention is when you're talking about it sounds like we're trying to just like take those like one sport athletes. That wasn't really what I was getting at. It was more, I don't want to be like the fourth sport. I'd like to be the two sport athletes. They're like, hey, I play baseball and I play ultimate, rather than I play baseball and football, and then there's some other. Yeah, and then like there's this thing that I hear about, but I have these other sports. That's not a real thing. So I'm just gonna like whenever I can, I'll maybe go. But if it jumps into like being one of the sports.
A lot of what I've heard people getting exposed to ultimate first was at cross country as like a cross training. Like a lot of kids are like, oh yeah, my track and field or my cross country team did this like randomly when they wanted us to have like a break before a meet or something.
That was how they recruited me to cross country. It's soccer. We play soccer, and they didn't know how to play anything.
Yeah.
So I've gone out to my cross country team and seen what they're doing. It's not ultimate, it's a disc.
Well, right, and that's the thing. It's like,
but that's fine, right? That's the start of this. Yeah, I think I think maybe what I was saying to clarify is like once an athlete shows promise and desire to compete in ultimate, I worry that we've gotten them into this year-round.
You're in ultimate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because
and it's partly, and I think it's probably even worse for female athletes because they're fewer, and for any program to be successful, we need them to participate more. It's because we're not getting more women, we need the women to participate more, right? And that's a common imbalance in our sport, and it's that kind of thing that I'm just worried about, and I think we need to be considering as we're trying to bring this.
I think this is zeitgeist in sport. It's so comparatively based that we I think the real gift of football is that the spirit of game, the joy of play is more important than winning and losing, more important than getting the right shirt or the right socks, more important than anything is that joy of play. And we discover joy by treating each other well and by cooperating. As long as the spirit of competitive competition supersedes the spirit of cooperation, you're always going to have losers. Kids take losing. You know what I mean? So if you want to create these elite national programs, you'll lose that. And I think Ultimate is at that tipping point. It's why the whole Olympic thing, that pyramid, good org charts now are horizontal, not vertical. And why is it Ultimate the flat basic sport? Why so many divisions, pyramids, organization structures? And I'm not saying setting up tournaments isn't fun. It sure is. Right. And God knows I've had a lot of fun winning and losing. But I've had fun doing it. And I think that's something we lose as we create these structures.
I think you're saying like this tipping point is absolutely true, right? Because Ultimate grew to this point off of having these experiences at track where we played Ultimate and you go, well, that was fun and it's not as high pressure as this other thing. And I actually want to do that instead because I'm doing it because I want to.
And I've heard a ton of kids come out of baseball and football saying, you know what? It was just too hard.
But we need a spot for the people that also want
I understand.
Right? Yeah. And then like that's the hard part, right?
Yeah, exactly, especially with youth, because we need that. Because adults who have already been raised in a culture in a society that produces that are running the program. You know,
Do you think it's, if it wasn't
I think the
the
most
adults?
important thing for you to talk about right now is youth.
A lot of.
Because they can learn to just play. They can learn to play, deal with the rules of the game, and each other, and this, and throwing. And that's the discovery, that's the joy of playing. You know, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, we did that in Austin. I haven't heard if there any youth pickup. We actually organized youth pickup games in Austin. I haven't heard of that here.
I think the challenges in my experiences, or from my perspective, I guess a better way to say it, has been with what we're used to as a pickup is a lot of people that can get themselves to some place. In case you're talking about dependents, they have to get somebody else to get them someplace. And parents, for whatever reason, it's probably for good reasons, not parents, crave some more structure, some kind of structure, oversight, guaranteed life. So pickup is a little bit of a challenge for those two things combined.
I couldn't agree more, but I also think that, like I said, that the tipping point is I mean, it's, I think it's also a really valid question to ask, what does Ultimate have to offer to the world? How is Ultimate, a sport that's different than other sports? And how is conflict resolution from person to person different than conflict resolution from a leader or a military?
I think with that Boys and Girls Club, which is the Blue Future one, and with the YMCA, the YWCA, I think those seem like places where that pickup can be a structured pickup. And so encouraging things like that to encourage and looking at some of those other structured pickup situations. So if we get into schools,
after school programs,
club
after school
programs.
programs is actually, I think, a huge one. It is, people are so hungry for after school programs. I mean, people who are running them are always looking for new ideas.
So maybe doing something where instead of building like an ultimate after school program, you just approach the after school program like, hey, like you were saying, with just giving some, when you set up the curriculum, we set up like, hey, this is what the sport is, this is what the sport's about. We're about self-regulation and spirit of the game. This is what we're about, here's the rules, and you just go to after-school programs and say, hey, you know what, you can incorporate this. Or if you don't have after-school programs, why don't you think about, maybe this is something that you can
But I think
base it on.
one part we definitely need to do some training for the leaders, the teachers, the supervisors, so that they have basic skills.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be asked how to do something, and they need to have that basic skill to be able to teach how to throw a backhand, right? Because you grab it right with your bag, because you grab it like this for a backhand, right? I've seen a kid throw this, or you grab it like this for a backhand. Right?
Okay.
Because they need someone to show them.
I just saw Kay make a motion that we're almost done. So I want to make sure we sort of present to the larger group the things that we identified. So let's make sure I got them right, and I got them all. Get into schools, and I felt like what you really said was administrative support, because somebody might see get into schools and be like, oh, you need more club, it's more what we're doing right now, just more of it, and obviously that's fine. But what we're really thinking is if the school supports something, that means a heck of a lot more than if the school is vaguely aware that maybe there's a club. Training educators and distributing curriculum.
I think we also need to build that curriculum.
And what I thought was we can't distribute something that hasn't been built, so I thought if I said distribute something.
But we do in the coaching manual, we have that like 12-day, we have that guy from the U of M who will like, this is what I did for like 3 days in my university program. We need a real curriculum. We don't, not just what somebody did one time and threw something together.
And a curriculum that teachers are used to interacting with. It can't be so
structured.
Yes.
And it has to have references to those objectives and things that the the PE teachers are trying to make sure that they match because they have to do their paperwork and say, by teaching this skill, I taught this and this and this, which are objectives that I have to meet for my job.
Right, yeah, and I remember you talking about how there are metrics that teachers have to hit. So yeah, I had distribute well-built curriculum. Beware of a single sport focus and foster multi-sport play. I don't know if there's more to say about that. Hopefully people are sort of familiar with the concept because I think you're very astute in that, pointing that out. Provide more introductory opportunities for younger kids. Focus on spirit of the game. This is what we're sort of at the end. Develop ways to help young kids with the challenge of self-initiation. Keep it fun, lots of pickup. Target community partners. Why Boys and Girls Club, after-school programs. Do we think anything as important as these things was missed?
Well, we didn't hit on that retention into adulthood piece.
Sure.
And I know, like, obviously that's like a whole other discussion in and of itself, but I think the three of us in our prior discussion hit on that a little bit with a lot of right now, the structure is like high school play to college play to club play.
Right.
And like it's elite or, I mean, or there isn't an option for kids who don't go to college lifetime to continue to the point where like
engaging colleagues, and other options that are not.
I don't 100% know if it's that there aren't any options, it's that we're not presenting the
Well,
options.
that's what I mean, is like for kids as a high school player, what you see is like, oh, I didn't go on to college.
The second that you said that, it kind of struck my head. I was like, when I talk to my kids, I'm like, hey, are you going to play college? Are you going to do this? Are you going to play college? I never really, that's not what you're saying. I never really present, hey, so you're not going to play, there's tons of stuff that you can do for fun.
Right, and that's more of what I meant, is what's presented to kids is this college ultimate.
To be honest, I never think about that.
What do you guys think of
Right, so like leagues or pickup or club teams that aren't maybe that top tier that we see streamed on ESPN, but are still very present. Yeah.
What if we tried to frame that succinctly as connect older youth to local leagues? I know that you just mentioned more than local leagues. My thought is when you get into local play,
sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in like right
structures.
Local structures. I know it's a big piece.
It's also,
well, I just saw it on there. Yeah. Retention into adulthood. That's why I just like threw that in there.
Can't ever answer everything.
Right.
Although we talk about
no.
We didn't talk about what we were going to talk about.
But I think that this like reaching more people and stuff. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. You got it in just under the wire, too. That was awesome.
Got it?
Who's first? Cam is first.
I don't even know what we wrote. Where is Ian?
We're looking right here.
Yeah. So our question generally was talking about, in the grand scheme of working towards Olympic inclusion as an overall goal, what do we prioritize? What are we willing to compromise? What are our priorities along the way? So being included in the Olympic family, that is being a member of the U.S. Olympic Committee, a member of the International Olympic Committee, that seemed like a no-brainer because of all the other great relationships with partner organizations and the benefits that that brings with bringing the game to other communities that we might not otherwise reach. Being a part of the Olympic program, I would say there wasn't full consensus in our group. I would say that everyone was absolutely excited about it. From what we understand, we aren't going to, or Ultimate as a whole, or WIFTF as a whole, will not need to compromise about things like spirit of the game, self-refereeing, other features that are important to us. Oddly enough, the thing that we spent the most time talking about in terms of what's a priority to us, what are we willing to compromise on? The way that we believe, or that USA Ultimate currently believes, it has a strong chance of getting into the LA Olympic program itself, might be through the beach venue as opposed to through playing on the field.
And we spent a lot of time discussing, is that how we want people to be introduced to the sport? Is that something that we believe would, compromise how we would introduce the sport to other people? We very briefly touched on the gender balance. Obviously, if you're playing 7-on-7, if you're playing 5-on-5, how is that going to play out? Who's going to dictate? But we didn't get into as much depth as I imagined we would have liked in just 20 minutes. So.
Thank you, Ian. Good job. One thing I would say, and think about who's going to volunteer next, is that you should all have received 5 dots. I'm going to do a little process check, make sure you got 5 golden dots. So there will be a quiz. So in other words, after we hear all the presentations, you will be asked to place your 5 dots on some items up here that you believe are important priorities for the organization to pursue in the strategic plan, ideas, priorities, and so forth for everything that's up here. So including the diversity and gender groups as well as these ideas. So I just tell you in advance to begin with the end in mind. So it's kind of like a quiz. So make sure you're listening to your colleagues here as they present. So who would like to come next in terms of their group report? All right, thank you, please. Which topic?
So we were the AUDL topic.
Got it, thank you.
So our small group had a very lively discussion on the AUDL topic, which was very fun. And this was more with regard to USAU's statement that they put out in 2014 about the AUDL. Well, at that point, both of the pro leagues or semi-pro leagues and now AUDL. And USAU's statement on not recognizing the pro leagues as pretty much an affiliation at all. Because of a couple core values that they felt that the pro leagues were not fulfilling. That mainly being self-officiating and then also gender equity, since the semi-pro leagues are only men. So what we talked about was one, the statement itself, and then how the statement has kind of played out in the past few years. And so fundamentally, in our group, we agreed with a lot of the statements in that policy as far as the values go, but we all agreed that the way it's played out in the last couple of years has not necessarily been very productive from a number of aspects. The AUDL at this point, it does not seem to be going away or necessarily changing. And so what we had a lot of conversation about was USAU needing to kind of reconsider the approach that they're taking to this league that is a real thing that's happening and providing a lot of media coverage to this one version of the sport. Reconsider the way that it's thinking about that in order to create some sort of value-based impact or at least start conversations at that level with the league to maybe have some sort of impact on change in the way that USAU values Ultimate. So we talked about a number of ways that that USAU could potentially do that, including potentially strategizing through the individual team ownership organizations that actually have a lot of influence over the league itself, and things like we discussed the Cascades Cup and some of the ownership of different teams, being willing to kind of consider some new options or different alternatives, or USAU maybe being able to provide some resources on gender equity and other statements to the AUDL to help maybe start to shift some perspectives. Since in the last few years, the media that's come out of the AUDL has really influenced the sport in a certain direction. USAU, instead of ignoring that portion, could potentially work a little bit more within that to hopefully change the perception and maybe find some more of the middle ground.
Nice. Thank you. All right, what's your topic and what's your name?
I'm Liza. We talked about elite level play. So we broke it down into talking about fans and players. So ways to make the Triple Crown Tour and our season in general better for fans and players. And although those issues are pretty different, some of the ideas we came up with kind of solve both issues. So for fans, the fact that we don't really have a regular season of like matches, we're really tournament based, and the Triple Crown Tour kind of drives there being like 3 big tournaments. It's not as easy for fans to get involved with or go watch. It's hard to devote a whole weekend. You know, the AUDL has had a lot of success because they do have single games and people go to watch a match, and there's a lot of hype, and it's easier to do time commitment wise. So although that's like very cost prohibitive to think about actually designing into our season, parts of ways we can sort of get to that is to like highlight these bigger events that we do have, like if we have a tryout or a training camp. Somebody mentioned how people go and pay to watch spring training for baseball, like that kind of thing, like putting these in big cities where people can come watch and like interact with those like high talent situations, instead of saying like to your friends that want to see you play Frisbee, like, well, locally we have league, if you want to come watch our league game. Like, that's not the exposure we're sort of looking for. So in terms of players, we talked a lot about the cost prohibitiveness of the season, the Triple Crown Tour in general. Not to rag on the US Open being in Rhode Island, but that came up as an issue. Just in terms of like, you know, cost to getting your team to these tournaments, both in terms of those locations and just the cost of the tournaments in general. You know, there's a lot of events at things like the US Open, and one of the people in our discussion mentioned kind of focusing on the tournament more, having less of those like big talks going on at the tournament while you're trying to prepare for the next day, and like ice, and like there's a lot of money going into that because they are important, but maybe like that kind of tournament isn't the place for it when it's already super expensive to get to. So another cool idea we had was thinking about having like small regional tournament opportunities that aren't really tournaments, like round robin, I would say. So like in maybe Seattle hosts like a few teams in the West Coast, and they stay together and you play 4 games and there's no winner, but you get those records for your stats for the season. In terms of back to the tournaments and the costs, another issue we talked about was having players be able to plan for the season. So in general, we kind of talked about transparency on the part of USA Ultimate in terms of how they're making these decisions for locations. Like, we want to be involved in that conversation and understand, you know, when are these things announced every year, and like, should we expect tournaments to be central? Is that the goal, or is there another goal? I think a lot of the resentment that comes from players is just not having that information, and they can't sympathize if they don't, you know, have that transparency to. You know, we talked to Tom, and there was a lot that went in with the US Open being in Rhode Island, but like nobody knows about that, so we probably would be more sympathetic if you knew. So I don't know if getting into like a regular season of matches and stuff is really realistic, but you know, thinking of ways to design more of that for fans and players, to have local things, to have smaller match type settings will help with costs, and I think also help with visibility.
Thank you very much. Okay, new structure and brand next.
No one in my group has changed their mind about presenting, right? Okay, so my group talked about the USA Ultimate brand, and the first thing that we talked about was making sure that we consistently collect data that's a little more specific than what we have right now. A lot of what we're going on is anecdotal. We do some surveys, but doesn't necessarily break it down into divisions or age or gender or anything like that. So if we get better data on a more regular basis, then we can at least figure out who's the least happy, who's the most happy, and help us figure out where to direct our resources, which should help us improve the brand. Second thing we talked about was making sure we're doing our best to include and reach all of our stakeholder groups. One of the things that came up in our group is that even though a large chunk of our membership is youth, we don't really see a whole lot of youth here tonight. So we want to make sure we're including their perspectives too, which generates buy-in, hopefully increases brand awareness and positivity. We also talked about trying to distinguish both Ultimate and USA Ultimate as leaders in issues like diversity and inclusion, to try and generate some pride in the sport itself and in USA Ultimate as a leader in that realm. A lot of people joined Ultimate because they like the fact that we're very inclusive and we like diversity and all those things. So we want to make sure that we're promoting that, and hopefully then creating some pride in the people that are USA Ultimate members.
talked about trying to increase direct connections to local programs, which also ties into our last point too, is increasing awareness of the positive programs that USA Ultimate does run. There are lots of programs that we do like GUM, Learn to Play, events, Play It Forward, all those things, which are really positive, but a lot of people don't necessarily relate those programs specifically to USA Ultimate. So we want to make sure that people understand those connections, and if they go to a Learn to Play clinic in their city, they realize that USA Ultimate maybe isn't on the ground right there because we're based here in Colorado, but is running that program and inspired that program, supporting all those things. So that's one big one. And also, by doing that, increasing our connection to youth and trying to instill a positive brand awareness at a young age so that they grow up, and as they continue to play Ultimate and move through the programs, they like USA Ultimate, they like Ultimate, and they're hopefully promoting that to their friends and family too. Did I miss anything? Group?
All right. Youth structure.
All right, my group talked about youth structure, specifically targeting increasing playing opportunities for youth, increasing the number of youth playing Ultimate, and then retaining those youth, not only when they're kids, but into adulthood. So the things that we talked about, we had a great conversation, I felt like, we're trying to get into more schools and actually get into schools with the administrative support of those schools. That's huge for kids to have the support, huge for parents to have that support. Along the lines of retention, we talked about how right now, a lot of times, the way we talk to youth about their continued playing opportunity is go to a college with a team, that's great. Then, play club, that's great. Not every youth is going to have that opportunity. So if we consider trying to make more connections to local structures, leagues, maybe more mid-level teams, there are other opportunities, other ways to keep youth engaged if they happen to not go to a college at all or go to a college that has a team. We talked about training educators better, so distributing well-built curriculum, making educators really feel like, this is like PE teachers, they know how to teach our sport. Just like they know how to teach soccer, basketball, the other sports that obviously is a little bit more in their conscience. One of the great points that I thought was really astute, just because some of us who are immersed in sport know that this is true, kids need to be playing multiple sports and having fun in multiple sports. They get burnt out when you really have too much of a focus on a single sport. So I felt like, our group felt like that was something that we really want to keep in mind as an organization and as a sport, that we want to be encouraging kids to try lots of sports and realize how fun Ultimate is in the context of all of their sport opportunity. We talked about having the Learn to Play program, essentially, how it's great to introduce young kids, but how we need as much of that as possible. We need a lot more of that. We need to get those intro opportunities to elementary school, when we say young kids, as many places as possible, and that's a challenge. And then the last thing that we really talked about, and obviously you can see multiple ways, was we really need to focus on spirit of the game when it comes to youth. Kids like to have fun. We need to make sure we're keeping it fun, that we're emphasizing the fun aspects of Ultimate. One of the things we talked about was how fun we all have when we play pickup, as opposed to maybe trying to win the national championship, and how that really does appeal to younger kids. We talked about how self-officiation is a real challenge the younger an individual is, because obviously as we get older we get more independent as human beings. This whole thing of self-officiation is appealing, but it's also less of a challenge. Kids, that's a very different story. So we need to really think about how we approach the challenge of self-officiation with younger kids. And then we also emphasize, this goes back a little bit to the Olympic family, that we really want to engage and target those partner associations that are doing fun stuff that are going to be appealed to by Spirit of the Game. YMCA's, Boys and Girls Club, and then after school programs we also mentioned was a very good opportunity.
Thanks again for coming out tonight. It was a big deal. You were very patient. We're a little bit over in time, and I apologize for that. We want to get you home, but before we do, just a quick reminder, we really are going to summarize this, so thank you so much to all of you who wrote so well on it. We'll be able to read it and synthesize it and summarize it and group it by themes with all the other information that they've been gathering with the 11 cities around the country. So before you go, again, you've got those magic dots, so we want you to put them on the ideas and the priorities that you heard tonight that really resonate with you. And you are free to put all of your dots on one thing if you feel really strongly about that, or spread them out. However you want to do that, that is your choice. And the other thing I would say before you leave also is, on your way out there will be slips of paper, and on the slips of paper we want to find out the degree to which you feel that USA Ultimate has heard you tonight. tonight. So we have a little slip of paper on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 not at all heard and 10 being completely heard. We want you to write in the number in that scale that best corresponds to how you feel you've been heard tonight. So before you do that, put some dots on the wall and congratulations to all of you and Tom.
I just wanted to say 2 quick things. Also on the slips of paper, any recommendations that you have on how we can improve this, we would also love to hear from you on. And then one last thing, 2 last things. One, big thanks to Kay, who's been guiding us now for months through this process. She does a great job. Thanks for coming. Very special thanks to Heather Ann, who jumped on a plane, has a very busy life going. You heard about all the stuff she already does to help us like crazy. Big thanks to Heather Ann for taking the time to come out and help us. She's gonna do amazing stuff. She already has. She's gonna continue to do that. Thank you very much. Where's our host?
She's right here.
Hey, please. Yeah. How about a big thank you? Place, and thanks for all your help, and thanks for all the wonderful work that all of you do. Please keep it up and let us know how to help as much as we possibly can. You're the key to our future. Now get the magic dots going. Thank you very much.